Welcome to your Ironman Chattanooga 70.3 swim, bike, and run course previews. First of all, on the swim, athletes will enter the water in a rolling start and head straight down the river for a 1.4-mile stretch before exiting at the beautiful Ross's Landing Park. Spectators will have a great opportunity to watch the swim from the Veterans and Market Street bridges and the Tennessee River Walk. And the average water temperature is typically in the low 70s. So now you have an idea of what to expect. Wendy will give you a real athlete's perspective because she has done this course. Wendy, it's a point to point and it's 1.4 miles of swimming. That's not normal. Go ahead.
Yes, 1.4 miles is just a little bit longer than the 1.2 mile typical 70.3 course is. And it's downstream. So don't let that, provide any fears for you because you're still should be faster than your typical 1.2 mile open water swim. And I say you should because a lot of that is dependent on the current that you're going to get race day. Some years you have more current than other years. And so you still want to become a strong, proficient swimmer. You don't want to rely on the downstream. If you're a beginner swimmer, I do suggest that you do learn to swim efficiently. Even though you're going to have a lot of help, it's still important because sometimes you have more help than other years. Now, it is point to point, so you have the choice of either walking the 1.4 miles up the river walk to the swim start, or they do provide buses for you. I chose the walking option because I was in control of when I could start my walk and how long it would take me to be there. And I think it's just a good warm up. Our wetsuits are probably, you just kind of want to depend on, it's going to be a race day decision if you're going to wear a wetsuit. If the temperature is 76.1 degrees or higher, it'll be a non-wetsuit legal swim. If it's 76 degrees or cooler, it'll be a wetsuit legal swim. What the word legal means is if you decide to wear a wetsuit, if it's above 76.1, you will be ineligible for prizes. And wetsuits do include the buoyancy shorts, Blue 70 core short, lift short, as well as other brands out there. I'm just familiar with the more of the Blue 71 because that is wetsuit material. You are allowed to wear a speed suit. Whether it's cool or warmer, the speed suit is not the wetsuit. So there is a difference between that. And if you're unfamiliar with that, you should check either out and that'd be fine to swim in. Now, again, going back to the downstream swim, most years it is got a pretty good current. And so you're going to get out of the water and you're going to be pretty happy because it's a little bit easier to swim with a current and your time's going to be a little bit faster. And as Dave mentioned, it's kind of, you're going to be going along the river walk. So there's tons of spectators, especially as you get out of that transition. There's just so many spectators. So if you're going to be one to go spectate, you just make sure you get there early and you get your spot early because it does get pretty full. And the transition's a little bit longer than other transitions that I've raced at, other events that I've raced at. The transition's a little bit longer. So expect to take more time. Your T1 might be a little bit longer than a previous T1 time in a different venue.
In my past experience of swimming in a river with a current, if you can get out deeper, you can usually catch the current. Any strategies for swimming closer to shore versus swimming out more in the middle?
That's a good point to make. The current is going to be a little bit different farther out than close. In a start, how they're going to do it one at a time. They're going to send you off one or two people at a time. Just try to draft off someone. Just kind of try to follow them because usually the swimmers in the beginning are more experienced and they understand that a little bit more. So you're just going to try to follow the people in front of you. I remember someone asked a question about how the current impacts a experienced swimmer compared to a least experienced swimmer. And we actually posted that answer in our T2 Endurance Facebook group if you have a question like that.
This looks like a pretty straightforward swim with the buoys, kind of a little zigzaggy in a way. And there's a landmass in the middle. So it should be fairly easy to sight. And you're also going under a couple of bridges. What do you recall from that?
Yeah. So when the Ironman sets up buoys, they're every 100 meters. And so if you're someone who really likes to keep track of your time or your pace, know that buoy to buoy is about 100 meters. It definitely a super easy course to sight off of because it's point to point. It's you're not going to have sun in your eyes. And another reference point is that I believe it's 2 bridges that you're going to go under. And so more for the less experienced swimmers, sometimes it's a relief. You're like, okay, I went under 1 bridge, check that off. Now I'm approaching the 2nd bridge, check that off. And then you're closer to the finish line. And for the most part, it is fairly close to shore. And so you don't have that sense of being in a huge body of water because the shore is right as at height sight. So it's pretty close.
And now your bike course preview for Ironman Chattanooga 70.3. This bike course takes you 11 miles south of town before beginning a 34-mile loop in North Georgia. It's 1 loop total. Athletes can expect some incredible views as they parallel Lookout Mountain on this rolling course with great road surfaces. As athletes near the end of the loop, they will get the opportunity to ride through an historic area, Chickamauga. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
56-mile course has approximately 2,200 feet of climbing elevation gain. So, Wendy, with this one, is it pretty straightforward? And how challenging are some of the inclines and the descents?
Yeah, so a rolling course with 2,200 feet of elevation gain, remember that's over the course of 56 miles. So in my mind, that's not that much. 2,200 feet over the course of an Olympic distance event is a lot more challenging than over a 70.3. So those first 11 miles are going to be flat and fast. And so if you're training with power, heart rate, pace, or rate of perceived effort, know that that's, especially if you're going off a pace, that's going to change when you hit these rolling hills. I love the rolling hills because they're not long or very steep. And so you really get a lot of momentum. You go up. You could probably do most of them maybe in your big chain ring, but I usually like to spin a little bit more on a rolling hill. And then you just kind of blast over the hill and you go downhill. And if there's another roller after that, use that momentum of your descent to help push you back up the next roller. So I do believe it's a very pretty course. The rollers are not that challenging and it's fun. It's fun to me because it's not flat the whole time and it's not super technical and it's not super steep ascents or super steep descents. It's pretty safe. This race has been along for a while and it's just a really nice course, generally pretty nice weather. There may be rain during the bike, but not usually has never been, a lot of rain, but there could be rainy, misty that time of year, but it's generally usually warm in May.
And Ironman is describing this with great road surfaces. Is that accurate?
The time I did it, yes, it's been fine.
And they also have on the elevation map a bit of a peak right before you finish the main loop, right before mile 45 or so. Do you recall that one?
Yeah, and so peaks can be deceiving on a map. Sometimes map show like this peak and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a huge elevation. Mm-hmm. But when you actually look at how much elevation it is during that section, it's not as much as you think it is. And so I wouldn't worry about anything that's not something that you can handle. You won't have to get off your bike to walk up a hill. Good. There's been courses in Colorado that people have gotten off their bike and walked up the hill.
Any special training that you would have to do to be successful at this course, or is it pretty straightforward?
Well, I'm always a proponent of trying to train in the last 8 to 12 weeks leading up to a race on course specific terrain if possible. So if you live in an area that has a 56-mile course with approximately 2,000 to 3,000 feet of elevation gain that you could do beforehand to give you a little bit better idea of how your pace and power and heart rate changes over the course of rolling hills. If you live in a flat section, I would do some bigger gear drills indoors if you don't have hills to climb, just to get your body used to the lower cadence that you're going to feel when you're climbing. And if you live in a mountainous area, I would definitely still do long climbs if you live in an area with long climbs, because it'll make those short rollers feel that much easier.
And now your run course preview for Ironman Chattanooga 70.3. Athletes will have a chance to see the scenic city as they complete 2 loops through downtown Chattanooga: the Tennessee Riverwalk, Veterans Bridge, North Shore, Walnut Street Bridge, and the beautiful Riverfront Parkway. Final stretch will come down Riverfront Parkway to finish at Ross's Landing along the Tennessee River. Total elevation gain for the run is around 800 feet, so it's just over 2 laps because at the end they have a straight section there for the finish. So it looks like there's some good spots for spectators. Is that much of a challenge in terms of elevation with this run course?
Again, in my mind, 800 feet of elevation gain over a half marathon isn't that much. I mean, that's less than 100 feet per mile. Probably comes to, let's just say, maybe 50 to 75 feet per mile. It's not that much. The first, when you exit transition, you are going to go up a hill to kind of get out of town or get on the Riverwalk, and then it's slightly downhill. It's like a false downhill. I didn't know I was going downhill, and I'm looking at my pace, and it was rather quick, but my effort was rather easy relatively. And so then when I got to the turning point where I started to head back the other way, I noticed it was like a false uphill. So I noticed I was climbing a little bit, but nothing that seemed hilly to me. And so you are going to experience false flats, false uphills, but nothing extreme. You're not going to be, going up an extreme hill where you can't handle it. I love the course because of the bridges. I just like going over bridges. It's really pretty.
What's the strategy for a 2-loop course, generally speaking, for athletes?
I think like any half marathon, you take, especially on a 2-loop course, you take the first 6 miles or the first loop, kind of get into a training groove, pay attention to the terrain, pay attention to when you're picking up speed, when you may be slowing down speed. Be very mindful of that. So when you hit it again, the second loop, you're that much more mentally and physically prepared for the terrain you're about to encounter. I'm a fan of looped courses for that very reason. I kind of get to feel it the first time out. And then as I'm feeling it out the first time, I'm kind of planning a strategy for how I want to approach it or attack it on the second time.
And this really looks like a great fan-friendly course for your family to see you multiple times, and the scenery is just amazing.
Yes, it is. It's Chattanooga in general. I've done the full as well. I've done the Olympic as well. I liked racing there. It's just a really beautiful town, tons of community support, very spectator friendly, very terrain friendly, variety. And I think it's just a great course for a beginner or experienced athlete.